Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co, and welcome back to the top 100 games of all time as of 2024, and today we are going through 40 through 31. For this video, I might actually skip the little notes that I've been doing at the beginning of every video. There's a process of how I do my top 100. Also, I'm running a support drive. You can check out all the other videos and or links down below to go ahead and check that out. Today, we're going to go ahead and jump straight into the top 40 games. Well, 40 through 31 specifically. We're going to start off with number 40, as we usually do in these videos, starting off all the way at that end over there, and number 40 is one that, well, it's still delightful. Haven't played it in like 6 months, but it still is a great game, and that is Encyclopedia from Holy Grail. Encyclopedia is a sad one because Holy Grail unfortunately did shut down. Holy Grail game shut down, which is sad for them. It's sad for all the people who had games outstanding. I backed Rallyman Dirt all in, didn't get that. This is a sidetrack conversation, but it's worth knowing when I talk about this game. But Encyclopedia as a game, I massively enjoy this game. I find, I talked in the last video about Unconscious Mind, and Encyclopedia has elements that are similar to Unconscious Mind, but at a lighter scale. I think this is a lighter game. Unconscious Mind is heavier, but both have the same concept that I enjoy, which is those cascading bonuses, where everything you do in the game triggers multiple things, making your turns so rewarding. In Encyclopedia, you're going to be taking a bunch of several core actions in this worker placement game. It's essentially worker placement, like 6 spots you can go to, but ultimately you're trying to gather animal cards, then research those animal cards, and then log your findings and trying to get as many points as possible through a degree of set collection, both through the various traits of the animals as well as the various colors of the animals. None of this really makes sense on an abstract level, but at a core level, you're taking worker placement actions in order to go ahead and log your discoveries and earn as many points as possible through a high degree of set collection in the game. But you also have cascading bonuses left, right, and center because many actions will give you stars that help you move up on a little star track, earning extra rewards. But you also get various experts you can add to your tableau, and those experts will trigger off of various things and or give you endgame victory points, and you can replace them to get in-game triggers, and then as the game progresses, getting those endgame victory points. There's a lot to think about in this game, but it plays at a very reasonable time frame, accommodates it plays well at 2, plays well up to 4. I think it's 2 to 4. That's actually 1 to 4. I've played the solo mode in this as well and enjoyed that too. I rarely dive into solo modes on competitive games, but I like this one enough that I did go ahead and do so. But Unconscious Mind, that's not true. Encyclopedia from Holy Grail Games is my number 40. This is an excellent mid to lightweight Euro game. My number 39 is another one that is we actually saw another game from this designer in the last batch as well. We covered My City last time, and this time at 39 we are covering Quest for El Dorado. The Quest for El Dorado from Reina Knizia. Is it The Quest for El Dorado or just Quest for El Dorado? I thought it was The Quest for El Dorado, but this just says Quest for El Dorado, but I wonder if it's this version of the game. But either way, Quest for El Dorado over here from Reina Knizia is effectively a deck building racing game. Ultimately, all you're doing is you start with a deck of cards, and then you create a map. The game gives you a variety of prefabricated maps you can go ahead and create, or alternatively, you can go ahead and create your own, just using a little bit of common sense. And I do think it's better to start your first games with the prefabricated maps, but once you learn how the game works, it's pretty easy to create your own maps as you go, taking advantage of the terrain structure to try to place interesting decisions for other players. But ultimately, what you're doing is you are building your deck. You see, your deck of cards is going to contain the types of terrain that you can travel through, as well as a ton of abilities you're going to be trying to be mindful of what's going to help you get through the jungle faster than the other players. Combine the strategy of the deck you're building, deck weeding in terms of when and where that's helpful versus overkill, and then combine with a little bit of the luck of the draw in terms of what comes out at the right time, and ultimately you are racing through the jungle, hoping for the right cards at the right time that will get you to the end faster than the other players. Incredibly easy game to teach, incredibly fast game to play. I love the Quest for El Dorado. I find it a highly engaging, satisfying experience that is, honestly, it makes me a little sad this is only 39, but that's because the next 38 games are pretty awesome games. Our number 38 is Marvel United. This time I just chose the box of Multiverse, but I just mean Marvel United as a general series, or DC United for that matter. Ultimately, the Marvel United series, since I first played it, has been an incredibly satisfying gaming experience where I've enjoyed the game on many levels, both solo, both with my kids, and with my friends. You can check out like 7 gameplay videos of me playing through a variety of the Marvel United faction stuff with Devin, just going through different unique modes of the game. It's just easy to play. This is one of those things where as much as I will enjoy a nice heavy Euro, as much as there are heavier Euros coming up in future videos, and in fact there's a nice heavy Euro coming up soon enough on this video as well, at the end of the day, there's something to be said for a lighter, more accessible gaming experience that just lets you play the game. Marvel United is a game I can dive into at any time and have a good solo or cooperative experience. Granted, it is very much on the lighter side, but there's a lot of variety to the villains you're facing off with, as well as the tons of scenarios you can play with, and then a little bit of variety to the heroes, past of course the thematic appeal of choosing to play as Black Panther or Wanda or whoever you want to do, the heroes have the least thematic element, but the villains and the scenarios give you a lot of variety to the gameplay, so you can continuously dive into it. Combine that with way too many sets of this, from the 3 sets of Marvel United to the upcoming set of DC United, and there's just so much content for this game that you'll never get bored of it. Granted, it is a lot of money if you get all this stuff for definitely a game that's on the lighter side, but I've also played this game more than a lot of games in my collection, and so for me, that justifies its existence, and it's many separate price tags. That's my number 38. My number 37 is a very large game. I don't have an easy way to cover this one. This is a very large game that, well, let's just grab it. Let's move this off to the side and grab to my number 37. And my number 37 is one of those times, speaking of Devin, I mentioned Devin, once upon a time in top 100 videos, Devin would show up and do things like put Alien RPG in his top 100 board games. And I'd give him flack for that because I'd be like, that's not a board game. You can do what you want, but it's not a board game. It's an RPG, it's a different database than BGG's database, so it doesn't really count. And I'm about to do the same thing to an extent. Because my number 37 is Shuffleboard. It's this giant shuffleboard over here. Now, the only reason that I'm giving I'm putting myself in the same bad camp that I put Devin in, is because if I were playing traditional shuffleboard with its full size, I could make the justified argument that that is in the Board Game Geek database. But I'm not. I'm playing this version of shuffleboard, which is a smaller, more accessible side, but it does mean that it's not technically what counts as shuffleboard. But given the fact that I've played this game over 100 times this year, and I've only had it for like 2.5 months, I think this has to count for something. Shuffleboard is not a game that's ever really been on my radar. Sure, I've seen Shuffleboard, I've thrown pucks across the thing and done the stuff and never really knew what I was doing. But then I got this, and this has been set up on my counter ever since I got it, and it just consistently gets played every single, like just today, like an hour ago, I played it again, because I would say I play this game more days than I don't. Maybe only 1 or 2 games a day, but that still adds up pretty quickly. There's just something accessible about being able to just shoot a bunch of pucks across the counter, and having it set up at a frequent place where it is always being walked past means this game gets played all the time, and I have so much fun playing it, and I'm 100 plays plus deep, and I'm still haven't gotten bored at all. This is just a satisfying experience. You can watch my full review of this. You're basically just flicking pucks across the board, but then with an understanding of the skill and knowledge behind why you're flicking pucks and what it is you're trying to do. And again, all of that, I grant you, does feel a little bit on the crazy side, but nonetheless, I can't stop the fact that this is, I like it. I'm having fun with it. It's satisfying. It's a good gaming experience, and that's going to be my, I guess I'll leave it over here-ish. I don't know how to, like, leave this in the shop, but we'll leave it in the shop. That's my number 37. I hope I don't knock it down throughout the course of this video. That's my number 37. My number 36, I'm going to carefully reach around Shuffleboard and try not to knock it over. My number 36 is Troyes. Troyes is an excellent game from Z-Man Games that's going to fall into that nice medium weight Euro category, possibly bordering a little bit on the heavy side. This is dice placement. Ultimately, it's dice placement, I guess, but you're going to be rolling dice, and you're going to be using those dice to go ahead and activate various sections of cards. But when you do so, you're going to be placing one of your own people on those cards to mark that you have access to the card. The problem is, if you're playing this game at 3 or more players, which I do recommend playing it at 3 or more players, there's only limited spots on these cards, so you're basically fighting for the right to be able to activate cards on an ongoing basis, which means your first actions are incredibly key. But meanwhile, you're jockeying for position in various houses, in the various dice houses in the game, to challenge who can get the most dice in play, and be able to be consistently rolling dice. But then the good news is, when your opponents have a good roll that you want to take advantage of, you can just take their dice. Granted, you have to pay for them, so there is a cost to it, but dice do not, your opponent having a bunch of good rolls does not stop you from being able to take advantage and possibly taking those for yourself. The combination of the dice you're going to use, the way you build your own dice pool, the way you have to pay taxes on your dice pool, or food costs, some sort of salary cost on your dice pool, the combination of the asymmetric cards you're going to have in play, because these primary worker placement spots are going to be variable cards that are going to change game to game, which forces you to examine a different puzzle every single time you play, which again, if you've been watching my top 100 or my content in general, you know that I appreciate a game that gives you a different way to experience it every single time, and that's true of Troyes a dozen times over. Especially if you have the Ladies of Troyes expansion, which gives you further expansion places to go to. It's just a satisfying dice placement game. It is, I don't say it's my top dice placement game in my top 100, but it's not. I think it's my second. Nope, it's not even. There's a higher one in this video alone. Never mind everything I said. There's lots of great dice placement games. Apparently, I am a sucker for a good dice placement game. But that's Troyes, our number 36. Coming in at number 35, one that was new to my list last year. In fact, what's new to my list this year? This year we have one that's new to my list. I think Shuffleboard is the only one that's actually new to my list in this particular top 10. But coming in at number 35, we have one that was new to my list last year. It is still here this year. I've still played it, continue to play this one, and this is Sankore from Osprey Games. I don't know what it is about Sankore, but I love the decision space in this game. Actually, I do know what it is. I know exactly what it is. It's the tenseness of every time you make a choice in this game, you are choosing several options that could be incredible for you, and inherently the ones you don't choose become options for your opponent, and the thing you do might create an additional option for your opponent. And that's the tricky part about this game. The reason I love drafting as a game mechanic, and no, drafting is not actually in this game, but the reason I love drafting as a game mechanic is because of that tension of making choices that are so hard, especially when you then hand the remaining choices you didn't pick to your opponent. And Sankore does not have drafting, but it does have that feeling in spades. I'm not even going to attempt to explain what the game actually does, because honestly, this is a game when I was reading the rulebook for the first time, I remember reading the rulebook, and I was thinking to myself, why do I keep taking on more Euro games? They're so much work compared to other genres. And then I play it, and I'm like, this is why I keep saying yes to compelling Euro games, because there's so much work compared to other genres, but the payoff when you find the right ones are so incredibly satisfying, and Sankore, make no mistake, is one of the right ones, at least for me. This is a game that has a lot in terms of the initial onboarding, not the complexity, just there's a lot going on, there's a lot of individual things you have to teach, but when it all comes together, you're left with an experience that gives you a ton of options, a ton of choices to make as far as what you're going to try to specialize in, what you're going to dabble in, and then ultimately what decisions you're going to make both for you and again, leaving those to your opponent. It all comes together beautifully. I love this game, cannot recommend it enough. Well, I guess I could recommend 34 games more than it, but other than that, I can't recommend it enough. That is Sankore, the pride of Mansa Musa from Osprey Games. My number 34, another one that was new to the list last year, but it's still doing just fine over here, is Expeditions from Stonemaier Games. This is my favorite Stonemaier Games game, and Stonemaier Games in general has had a good year for me in general. Between Expeditions and Apiary are both fantastic games, but they've had a bunch of games over the years that have done well for me. Viticulture I still have. I feel there are others. Tapestry I still have. There are a bunch of games in the Stonemaier catalog that I enjoy playing very much, but Expeditions is at the top of that list. There's something about, again, bear with me here, I'm going to say the same things I regularly do, but the variability of the experience is what keeps me going here. There's a genre in games that it basically has you going through a ton of cards and then trying to find the combination of those cards that work best for your engine. And that genre allows you to have a core structure and then a ton of things that work to accommodate that structure. You can argue there's an element of that in Trois, but I feel that one's a little different. But this one, games like this one, games like Wayfarers of South Tigris, games like Vindication or Terraforming Mars, they all have lots and lots of cards, and it's up to you to find the best combination of those cards. And every time I play Expeditions, I feel faced with that challenge and then trying to figure out whether I can face that challenge, take on that challenge, and power through it. Ultimately, you have a lot of cards that will go into different spots on your mech. You're playing with a mech. This is a spiritual successor to Scythe, and every turn you're taking 2 of 3 actions. There's more nuance than that, but the basic idea is every turn you're taking 2 of 3 actions, either moving or playing a card or gathering at the location you're at. But very often you are focusing on building that card deck and being able to play cards for their abilities, both their resources they're going to give you and the way those cards will fit into your engine, either as quests, as meteorites, as items, and trying to figure out the right combination of all those abilities and point scoring mechanisms that will favor you while being mindful of the board placement and how to take advantage of the board. That's also a key component in the game. There's a lot going on here. The expansion was a nice quality of life expansion. I don't think it really drastically changed my opinion of the game. There were some nice things in the expansion, and that's kind of it. But ultimately, Expeditions, thoroughly enjoyable game. Highly recommend it. That is my number 34. My number 33 is in the expansion box, but it's the basic game. It's Cascadia. My number 33 is Cascadia in the landmarks box over here, just because that's where I chose to store it. But Cascadia is still one of my favorite just tile laying experiences in which you're going through variable scoring and just trying to find your own little puzzle through it. This is a game that I've played through the entire solo thing. I think I've played the entire solo mode twice now. So I've gone through the entire solo challenge, and then I've done it again, going through it again, because it's just so much fun to play through solo. But I've also played it a ton competitively as well, because it's just so fun to play competitively. Ultimately, Cascadia is a game about drafting tiles, and then the animals that go onto these landmarks, onto these tiles, and then trying to be aware of the point-scoring cards, which are variable game to game, Again, that variability aspect. The point scoring cards that are going to give you different patterns of animals that you're trying to figure out the right patterns of combinations of where you can get the right amount of eagles and bears and foxes and all these things, and putting them into your terrain in the right structure to be able to satisfy the scoring cards, get terrain scoring points from the terrains themselves. And if you're playing with the expansion, you additionally have the landmarks to be mindful of as well. There's a lot going on in this game, in a game that teaches quickly, plays well solo, plays well multiplayer, does so all at a reasonable price point, and it's just a lot of fun. That's my number 33. My number 32 is the other dice placement game I mentioned. This is Bruges from Stefan Feld, a dice placement game. I believe my second favorite Stefan Feld game, at least as of right now. Stefan Feld always has enough games that you never really know where his game's going to end up. But Bruges over here is a dice placement game. I need to play this game again, honestly. Honestly, I need to play. I have the Hamburg as well, but I haven't played Hamburg yet, but I want to. Hamburg is the re-implementation of Bruges, but I want to see which one's better for me. But Bruges, ultimately, it's a dice placement game where you're trying to figure out how to... Is it even dice placement? It's not even dice placement, technically. It has dice in the game. It has color dice in the game, but your actions are depending on the dice. And ignore what I said about dice placement, that's wrong. It just has color dice in the game. This is a game which you're going to be managing multi-use cards. You have cards in your hand that you're going to be using to do any number of different things, because every card can be discarded for a house, or a person that goes in the house with tons of abilities, tons and tons of asymmetric abilities on all the people, and that's going to force you to examine everything you want to do right there. But you also need to discard cards in order to get money. You need to discard cards in order to build canals. You need to discard cards for everything you do in the game, and discarding cards at the right time is key. Remember how I mentioned discarding cards for money? Well, when you roll these dice every single round, that's going to determine what the cards are good for, where they can go, and what they can do. And so you might want to go ahead and discard a purple card this round because you can get 6 money out of it. But you also might need to discard it to go ahead and deal with a threat that's coming your way, because there's a constant escalating sense of threats in the game that are forcing you to be mindful of when is the right time to allow a threat to hit versus when is the right time to try to deal with threats. You're trying to figure out your own little puzzle. The expansion, by the way, the City on this Win, I recommend it as an essential expansion to this game. It's not essential. The base game is great on its own. But when I say essential, I mean that I would never play without the expansion, or at least key modules from the expansion, because it adds so much options and choice to the game and rounds out what the dice are already doing very nicely. Bruges is an incredible experience. You can play it online if you find it on Yucata. I believe it's on Yucata with the expansion as well. You can try it there. But it's just one of those gaming experiences that the first time I played it, I liked it. And then as I played it more, I fell more and more in love with what the game is doing and the choices it presents you with. Again, base game on its own is amazing. Expansion is just a better version of that game, and one that I highly, highly recommend. My second favorite Stefan Feld game. And then my number 31 is a giant dungeon crawler, or I think it's a dungeon crawler. I've had this fight with people. It's a dungeon crawler. This is Black Plague, or specifically Zombicide Black Plague. This, and I should note as well, this shares a spot with Marvel Zombies. I tend to put this together. I happen to choose Black Plague as the representation. But that's because I don't know which one I prefer from Marvel Zombies or Black Plague. They go neck and neck with me consistently. I've gone back and forth. I will continue to go back and forth. They're both... To me, there's a lot of games in the Zombicide universe, and Marvel Zombies and Zombicide Black Plague are the top of that line as far as how they are. But as far as why I like Zombicide so much, and I will say Zombicide is a game that I ignored when I first got into gaming. I thought, like, why would people want to play with plastic miniatures when you can instead plant crops? Planting crops is so much more what an adult person is going to do. Who plays with plastic miniatures? And I had that thought for a while, and I don't know what eventually made me take the plunge, but eventually, like 6 or 7 years into my gaming hobby, I got into gaming like 2011, and I want to say I played Black Plague for the first time in maybe 2017, maybe 2018 is when I first played it, and I don't know what made me decide to do it. I think... it probably was games like Blood Rage. Playing games like Blood Rage, where it's more area control, but they had miniatures. I think that started me on the pathway to being open to, like, maybe these other miniatures games aren't so bad. And I played Zombicide Black Plague for the first time, and I very quickly fell in love with the game and the genre in general. That led me down a deep rabbit hole of all these types of just miniature-heavy games that was something I never really delved in before. But Zombicide, to me, still remains one of my favorites within the genre, specifically Black Plague and Marvel Zombies, as games that give you the ability to grow your characters, develop your characters, unlock various abilities, and then try to deal with the hordes of escalating zombies in an absolute ton of scenarios, as well as the modularity that the various scenarios, the expansions, the abominations, all those things will bring to your table. Ultimately, it's an experience that is incredibly satisfying to wade your way through a horde of zombies, slashing them left, right, and center, taking them all down, and then either winning, because, you know, it is fun to win, or alternatively getting so close to that victory, but eventually being mown down by just too many zombies that you weren't able to get out of their way. There's something about opening a door and having 4 wolves behind it that can be a chilling moment, and a moment that you realize that you screwed up and you're all gonna die and it's time to rinse and reset and try again. Or pull out a Eurogame and plant some crops. That's also an option as well. I love the Zombicide experience. It is one that I am always understanding. When people are judgmental of big boxes of miniatures, I'm always understanding of that because I was in that category. I didn't say anything. I never went online and trashed other people because that's not something I care about. But it is... I just remember looking at games like Zombicide and thinking, why do you want a big giant box full of plastic miniatures? What is the experience that you're getting out of that? And I think I know now. I think I know because this is my number 31 game of all time, and there's some other big box miniature games that will be even higher on my top 100. Anyways, that is my 40 through 31. That is the 7th video in my series of top 100 games of all time as of 2024. We'll be back tomorrow with 30 through 21 and the last 3 videos, which is where the really good games finally begin. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.